live.
Yes,
All
we are.
right. We are talking loudly in a bookstore, which is no. We're not
Uh,
supposed to do that, but we are getting so ready for John David Mann to be doing an event at the library. Lisa, take over from there because I can't remember the exact city of the library. Not
we're in
library, the
Larchmont,
bookstore.
Larchmont, New York, and I feel like doing the Ray Stevens thing. Hey, we're live. We're like like the streak. We're live.
don't
Uh-oh.
don't look at
Oh, yeah.
all.
Yeah, so
I'm really excited about that. I love it when John's going around
Lisa
doing all
Wilber.
these events. I love.
He was the editor who wanted to be go-giver when we first appeared.
Oh, I'm sorry. You want to say hi to my audience? Jeff and I do a show every Thursday night. Jeff and I do a live stream show every Thursday night.
Really?
So we're live doing this and on location.
Hi, Teresa.
Oh, Teresa's on. That's awesome. Oh, I see. Hey, hi guys. Yeah, I'm in New York, Teresa. You can guess why. Oh, and Peg's on. Peg Duchesne. Yay, and June's on.
June.
Yeah.
Hey, June. What a sweet
John,
what a sweet group of people.
John's going to start momentarily, and he's going to read a passage from Blind Fear. And I'm in an awesome bookstore. I don't know if you can tell. It's got 2 dogs. That's my favorite feature. But there's
I like a 2-dog. I like a 2-dog bookstore, kind of like a 3-dog night.
Oh, and there's Don King. Hey, Don and
Hey,
Janelle.
Don and Janelle.
Hey, yeah,
And hey, Facebook user that I can't tell who you are.
And there's John's wife right there.
Yes.
Talking.
For those of you that. Yeah. For those of you that haven't met John's wife, Anna, she is a dear lady. They're just the best couple ever. And you guys know just from our shows how big of a fan I am of John David Mann. And he's literally my favorite author, and he's a mentor to me in my writing. And so I just love the man to death. But I'm excited about this because you guys are going to get to experience one of his bookstore appearances.
Well, and for those of you listening, if you're not aware of who John David Mann is, you can go to johndavidmann.com.
2 N's in man.
And 2 N's in man, yes. Oh, and there's George Bedu.
Hey, George.
Hey, George, I'm on location. I don't know if I told you I was doing that. I'm on location in Larchmont.
She's a reporter on the scene.
The streak. And here he comes, running around this track.
I don't know, but she had blue hair.
What was Ethel? Ethel, don't look, Ethel.
Don't look, Ethel. It was too late. She had already been mooned.
The fact that we both know the words to that is kind of sad.
I think I know the words to every Ray Stevens song there is.
I was just on George's show. We had a great time. Did you?
I haven't seen it yet, but I'm going to look at I'm going to watch the recording tomorrow. So.
Yeah, we had a great time. That was George Bedu, the Network Marketing Magazine. And for those of you listening, if you missed it, make sure you join the Facebook group, the Network Marketing Magazine, because I know you can see the replay there. I think you can see it on my wall, too, because I shared it while we were recording it live. So that was fun.
If you are in direct sales, just like you follow Lisa, you need to follow George in the Network Marketing Magazine. That is such a great resource for all of you.
And you can get a subscription to that Network Marketing Magazine for $9 a month. That's it. Oh. And you get access to all the old issues. That's what I think is that's crazy.
I've got a lot of old issues that have nothing to do with it. But I don't think I talked about that unless we're in the green room. So
you're an old issue.
You guys notice we're talking quieter tonight because to me it feels like we're in a library, even though I'm still in my house in Texas.
Oh, Janelle hasn't been able to see it. And you know what, Janelle, you and somebody else said they couldn't see it, and we still haven't figured out why, because other people were seeing it, and on my wall I have it public, and on their wall that I shared it from, it was public. So we can't figure out why you couldn't see it.
Yeah, I mean,
so I'm still unsure. Go ahead.
You and I have not discussed this yet, but sometimes when John does this, it could last more than a half an hour. Are we going to keep going live as long as he's talking?
We're going to go as long as he's talking.
Okay.
Yeah, and then if people have to leave, they can always come back and look at the replay.
Right.
The store doesn't stay open only till 8, so
Right.
they're going to be hustling us out not too long, probably.
Right.
So,
These are details we normally work out in the green room. Green room. Green room.
well, I'll tell you, I got an extra bonus today because I was over in Yonkers with Tall, Dark, and Handsome, and I ordered an Uber, and I got an extra comfy one. So I was in a Kia Sorento, and I got to ride in the back, so I could feel fancy. See, that's something special today. I can see you're impressed. Yeah. Yeah, and Janelle said, "Just my luck." You weren't the only one, Janelle. There was somebody else who couldn't see that live, and I just don't know what the deal was. But I got to try to figure it out so you can see it because it was good. It was a good show. I think that you'd like. You know what? I got to get them to upload. George, if you're still on, I got to get them to upload the interview on YouTube so that I can put it on saidthelady.com.
Yeah.
Because then anybody can see it on YouTube. And I know they already have a channel set up. So
I think I'll go ahead and make an announcement while we're waiting.
okay.
Everybody, you guys follow
you're gonna announce
Lisa
your
and I,
co-author.
and
You're gonna, good.
we
Okay.
got the new parable that I've been working on for several months. The set of New Orleans. Great story. It's called Streetwise to Saleswise. And my co-author is Bob Berg, which you guys all know. And here is the book cover. So I thought I'd show it up to you tonight.
Isn't that awesome?
It is. It's a great cover.
I love that cover.
And
Yeah.
I told the cover designer that I wanted them. I said it's a business fable, so I want it to look somewhat like a fiction cover and somewhat like a business cover. And I think they did a great job for me. Look at that.
That's awesome. Do you want me to tell them what you I was talking about doing the endorsement graphic, and
Yeah.
and Jeff made sure, he said to me, the book has something to do with New Orleans. I've already read it, and he said, make sure you have some New Orleans flavor in the graphic. So I said, can you get on a Zoom for a minute? And he got on. I said, thanks, Captain Obvious.
She did. Maybe get on the Zoom to kick my butt.
I'm like, thanks, Captain Obvious.
For those of you that have joined us kind of later, the person you see right behind Lisa is John David Mann. John is literally my favorite author. He's a co-author on The Go-Giver. He's written 30-something books, New York Times bestseller, sold over 3 million books. I want to be him when I grow up. He's also a great mentor and a friend to me on my writing and all that. So he's kind of my hero. But I'm glad you guys are going to get to hear him talk about his latest book tonight too, Blind Fear. Well, actually not his latest, but the one that he's doing on the book tour. He had another one today or this week called The Vagrant. You guys have to get that book. Oh my gosh, it's good.
Yeah. Now, you won't have to worry too much. He ain't growing up anytime soon. What are you, like 6 now? No, 12. Is that it?
I've been 6 10.4 times. So.
There you go. Not bad.
I'm about to be version 6.4. So.
George Madu said, "Say hi to John for me."
Hey, George.
Yay!
All the connections.
And Don King. Okay. So, and Peg said, the Vagrant is fantastic. Read it in a day. Oh, I haven't got it yet. How'd you get it?
I pre-ordered mine.
Oh, I just. We're gonna get going. So I'm gonna.
We're gonna be quiet now, guys.
Oh, okay. Just tell me when you're ready. Oh, I got a dog. Look. Oh, there's a dog. Oh, hi, baby.
Get me a dog hug while you're there.
Oh.
I don't know.
Lisa, I have lost you. Are you still there?
Girl. She smells my dog. Oh.
Lisa, you have frozen up. I can hear your voice, but your picture has
What
frozen.
happened? Ooh, that was scary for a second. I don't know what happened. The internet. So, Peg pre-ordered too. The Vagrant. I didn't pre-order. That was my problem. I heard her talking about smelling like a dog. No, Dawn, it's not smelling like a dog. I was getting smelled by a dog. I'm sorry, what were you going to say?
Hey, Lisa, can you hear me?
I definitely read. Awesome.
Hey, Lisa, can you
Can you hear me? Or you can't hear me?
I can hear you, but your picture is frozen. There you go.
Yeah, I'm using the bookstore's Wi-Fi, but that seemed to. Oh, you're doing it on purpose now. Oh,
No, you're still
sorry.
you're still freezing.
Oh no, no. Oh, it's
You're good.
freezing still.
No, you're good.
Is it good?
Yeah.
Can you see this?
Don't do that. Green room,
Green room. Oh yeah. Oh, Dawn said Max Headroom. I remember him. My Tall, Dark, and Handsome. We were watching the news earlier, and the reporter looked like Paulie Purebred, and he didn't think that was funny. I didn't think that was mean necessarily. You remember Paulie Purebred?
I do. I went to school with a girl in college that looked just like her, and it was so funny.
The reporter looked just like her too. So we. Okay, we're starting momentarily.
Cool.
We're starting. I'm doing.
My job gets.
I'm on the phone.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't sure how to do. I do have the laptop with me, but I think this was the better choice. And he's going to start reading a chapter from Blind Fear in a moment, and then he's going to take questions not from me. Oh, Peg would have. Yeah, I don't even want to say this in front of Peg. He wanted me to read the questions, and I didn't want to.
So that went to a very good.
Peg's gonna bust you for that.
Forever.
Get her, Peg. Get her, Peg.
Yeah, when you go to a conference with Peg, she goes, raise your hand. If you don't raise your hand, I'm going to raise your hand for you. Oh, Peg said shaking my head. She's shaking her head. Yeah. Yeah. Penny said, hi, Jeff.
Penny.
Lisa and Jeff, I hope you both are having a great day. Yes, I'm having a fabulous day. You have no idea how fabulous.
It's a really nice.
You have no idea how fabulous. Oh, look at the Oh, Penny, that was good. The blushometer. He's got the blushometer out. Yes, that was a good idea. Matter of fact, it was Peg's idea. Let's all give Peg credit for this, because when she heard John say something about it's near Yonkers, she called me. Okay, here we go. Okay,
Great.
here we go. Everybody.
You guys enjoy it with us.
In that case, we'll real serious. I don't know.
We're gonna kick off. Excuse me, talkative lady in the front row. Well, good evening. Most of you don't know me. We're going to kick off. There's some more people who are still on their way, but we don't want to hold the book here. So let me go ahead and I'll start and introduce what it is we're here to talk about. So you all know I'm John David Mann. What? Put the bottle of water on the floor. Yeah, we're here to talk about the latest, number 3, the latest in the Finn thriller trilogy. I'm going to talk a little bit about that and then give a little bit of a reading. This is Blind Fear. I think everybody here knows this series, but just in case, this is the third of 3 books. Eagle Fear, number 1, Cold Fear, number 2, and Blind Fear is number 3. They all follow the adventures of Finn, no last name. If he has a last name, either he doesn't remember it, or if he does remember it, at least we don't know it. Because his last name represents his past, and there's a lot about his past that he doesn't remember or doesn't want to remember, or is still trying to find out. Every one of these 3 books has its own story, has its own arc, its own mystery. They're all mysteries, and each one has a mystery which is solved at the end of that book. In Steel Fear, which is on an aircraft carrier, there's a serial killer taking people out one by one. In Cold Fear, which is set in Iceland, there's a girl who mysteriously drowns herself at the beginning of the book. And nobody knows why. By the end of the book, you find out why. You get closure at the end of the book. You get closure at the end of Blind Fear. There are two children who disappeared in the opening, in the prologue of the book. And we don't know where they went or who took them or why. By the end of the book, you know the answers. Each book has this mystery with its answers. But there's a larger mystery that arcs over all three books that you don't know all the answers yet. To be honest with you, I don't know all the answers yet. Although we do learn some. In every book, we learn more about Finn's mysterious past, his unremembered past, his memory issues. And they have to do with traumas that he's experienced on the battlefield, but also much, much earlier in his life, in childhood. Finn, I won't commit any spoilers here, but Finn underwent a horrific trauma at the age of 8, which has scarred him and colored his entire life. And immediately after that event occurred, he ended up by himself in a hospital for weeks, where he was sedated continuously because he would wake up screaming for whatever reason he didn't know himself. And I'm going to do a reading about that time in his life. This is from Blind Fear, where Finn is, in the present day, is having nightmares about that time when he was. So this is a bit of a flashback for him. And again, I'll say, by the end of the book, we know something about that, but there's more we don't know yet. These handy bookmarks are all available at the campus store, Ray Henderson. But here goes the reading. So this is from chapter 11 of Blind Fear. Finn awoke screaming. Not out loud, of course. Silent screams that shivered through his body and finally shook him out of sleep. Now he lay silent, sweat-soaked in the still heat of the room, staring up into the darkness. One of the nurses had been kind enough to talk to him, to explain in hushed tones why it was they strapped him down and shot him full of sedatives when he awoke screaming for his pants. "We do it to protect you," she'd said. "You're having night terrors." Young Finn didn't understand. Night terrors? About what? He didn't remember the dreams once he was awake. He didn't remember how he got to the hospital or what happened before. He had a memory of his father telling Ray and him, "We should be back in a day or two at most." That had to be at least a few days ago, right? So where were they? Why were these people keeping him prisoner there? Why wouldn't they let his parents in to see him? It wasn't until weeks had passed, still in the hospital, that he'd finally gotten an answer to that question. That he finally found out why they never came to see him. It happened one night when they all thought he was asleep. Poor kid. Disembodied voices floating somewhere above him. He kept his eyes shut. Poor kid. You hear about his parents? Whispered one voice. I know, the second voice whispered. Hit by a freezing truck. Once he was sure they'd left the room, sure he was alone in his cold cell with no one around to hear. He let a few sobs escape, then reined himself in and lay silently, weeping in the dark, until he fell into an exhausted sleep. Later, in his first foster home, he pieced together a picture of what happened. They'd been on one of their road trips when they'd heard the news about the accident at home. Turned the car around and headed back. It was late at night. There was a thunderstorm, driving rain, visibility near zero. On a long curve in the road, an 18-wheeler slammed into them, hit by a freaking truck. For the next 5 years, he'd been tormented by a recurring dream. The car, threading its way along a highway through the Oregon woods in a blinding thunderstorm, going into that long curve, and the massive crash when the two vehicles collided head-on. And Finn would awake, screaming, sweating, screaming in his head. And now, these past few months here on Vieques, the dream had been coming again, and Finn didn't understand why. Because it wasn't true. None of it. It was a fantasy, a fiction 8-year-old Finn had invented to preserve his own sanity. It wasn't until Finn was in his teens that the reprobate who ran his third and final foster home told him what really happened. Your ma and pa's these fugitives, boy, wanted in 3 states. When you hit the loony bin, they just run off. The moment the man said it, Finn knew it was true. The isolated cabin, the barrels of fertilizer in the shed, the closet full of guns, wanted in 3 states. His parents hadn't been killed in a crash. When they heard there'd been an accident and the police were at their cabin, they just stepped in the gas and kept right on going. And that whispered conversation had come back to him then, the true, unedited version. Poor kid, you hear about his parents? I know, butt wipes. Would have been better for him if they'd been hit by a fucking truck. Would have been better. They call it magical thinking, Carol told him. Something you make yourself believe because you don't want to face what really happened. And she was right. He'd known it even then at the age of 8. That was the reason his life came unmoored, why he drifted at sea ever since. There was no thunderstorm, just one long empty night, and a car's taillights disappearing off to points unknown, while an 8-year-old boy lay screaming in a hospital bed. So I just thought we'd open with a nice cheery scene.
Clearly, it's a comedy.
Yeah, it's basically written for laughs. Yeah, so that's where Finn starts out in this book, and as I say, by the end of the book, he understands a lot more, and we understand a lot more about what happened to him and what happened to his parents and what is going on that's turned this man into the man that he is as an adult. As I said, there's more that we don't know yet, but we learn a lot. So, having read a little bit, I'd like to just throw this open to you all. To any questions anybody wants to ask. This is open mic, open season. Ask me anything, AMA, about the Finn series, about the writing process, about Finn, about any other books, about what I eat for breakfast, what makes novelists write about terrible things when they're not really such terrible people, we hope. Whatever, any questions you got, I'm here to answer. Neil, handsome young gentleman in the front row.
Appreciate the just reminded of something I've thought about as reading the series and seeing Lee Child's quote on the cover of Steel Fear.
Yeah.
I was always surprised about the original casting of Tom Cruise producing the original Jack Reacher book, and he's so different than how he's described in the book, and then of course Amazon comes out with a series that's truer to
Richardson, yeah.
how Lee Child envisioned him. And I'm curious what you think. Like Finn is distinct in Steel Fear is introduced in I think it's Monica misconstrues which one is the Marine,
Right.
the SEAL, excuse me.
Right.
And so I was wondering if you had attachment in your mind as this is envisioned by Hollywood, like how true to his physical appearance you would imagine. Like, do you feel the audience would be served by being true to how he's written in the series in that regard?
So that's such a great question. It's like it kind of sparks in a bunch of directions. So first off, in the context of what you asked, I should say that we're in a deal. We have a Hollywood deal going on right now. We have a deal with a studio called WIP, W-I-P. This is the studio who produced the Amazon series Mayor of Easttown. which, if you haven't seen it, was a really phenomenal program. Eight-part miniseries, limited series. And they bought the rights to turn the Finn books into a streaming TV series. We're in the middle of a writer's strike, so everything is ground to a halt. And the fact that they've signed a deal to develop it doesn't mean for sure it'll show up on your screens, because in Hollywood there are lots of hurdles to jump. It's not like New York, where there's only one hurdle to jump. But we're more than halfway there. So there's a decent, pretty good chance that we'll see Finn on the screen. So your question becomes more germane. Lee Child was really happy with Tom Cruise. It's interesting. I was too in that role. And I think that Child and I may be the only people, maybe my wife, people hated it because Jack Reacher is 6'6" or 6'5", depending. And Tom Cruise is like, I don't know, 3'8" or something. It's like he's a short man. Lee's own answer to that whole fiasco to fans is, look, he didn't embody Reacher in his literal form, but he did a phenomenal job, in Child's view, capturing kind of the essence of who he was. There were other discrepancies. Tom Cruise is really nifty with the car in that first movie, and Reacher didn't even know where his stick shift was. Like, he could drive a Jeep. He's an army rat, and that's it. There are other distinctions that people got upset about, and I think they got a little bit literalistic about that. But I thought Cruise was fantastic. But Finn, yeah. I always pictured Rami Malek as Finn, which is not going to happen, probably not, for a variety of reasons, and some good reasons. You know, one of which is that it would be better to have somebody not so well known, because you don't know anything about who this guy is. Anyway, the same reason Kathy Bates was great to be the ogre in the movie Misery, because she wasn't that well known yet, so you didn't know what she was going to do. So Neil referenced this scene in Steel Fear, the first book, where Finn is first introduced, and Monica, the helicopter pilot, she's going to pick him up, and she sees out the front windshield down on the airstrip this big, athletic, handsome, like mountain lion of a guy loping down toward them, and some scrawny-looking, goofy officer struggling along behind him carrying his pack. And they get to the helicopter, and she's thinking this SEAL totally outclasses the officer, even though the officer might technically outrank him. And they get there, and she says, "We're here for Chief Finn." And the scrawny guy climbs on the helicopter. The mountain lion is just an escort. It's the goofy-looking guy who's short. So Finn is short. He almost has he looks like a marsupial, Monica thinks. He's really unprepossessing. He doesn't look like what everybody thinks of as a typical SEAL. And one reason that we did that is that a lot of SEALs don't look like what we think of as a typical SEAL. SEALs, by and large, yes, they're strong, yes, they're muscular, but it's a much more cerebral discipline than an athletic one. Anyhow, yeah, I think that if they cast Chris Hemsworth, Chris Hemsworth as Finn, I think it would do a disservice to the reader, but, you know, I won't complain super loud. It's like they get it made and they do a good job, I'll be really, really happy. I think it would be cool to have someone who looks like Rami Malek, who's very distinctive, big eyes and unusually shaped face and so on. I think that would be great if they do that. I think that by and large, making a book into a screen representation is really difficult, and you have to make massive changes for it to work. The book Cider House Rules takes place over 30 plus years. The movie takes place over 3 years. John Irving wrote the screenplay, so it wasn't some hack. It's like, and it works. 3 Days of the Condor, that movie was in its book form. It's 5 Days of the Condor, and there's a reason for that. So, I'm prepared. I just want it to be good. Then they can do whatever they want.
At what point did you start changing your mind? Like during the
You know, it's a funny
writing
thing.
of the book? Or?
There are a lot of novelists who do that. They cast in their minds. And I am a very non-visual person. I don't see things in my head well. I don't visualize things well. As a result of that, I easily get lost in a new city. Where my wife, you could drop her out of a helicopter and she'd find her way like that. I don't visualize things well, which means that it's very difficult for me to write physical descriptions of environments. So I intentionally pick really unique, distinctive, fascinating environments for each book because it means a lot of homework for me. I have to do the work to construct this in my head because I don't see it naturally. And I have to work at it until it's all there on the page, and then I know the reader's going to see it. So as another result of that is I never cast stuff in my head. It's like I don't see, people say, who do you see being Monica? I don't see anybody being Monica. Monica's tall. I know that. That's like it. Captain Eaglebird in Steel Fear has a nose that looks like an eagle's beak. That's all I know. The only time I've ever cast somebody in my head who was out of one of my books was Rami Malek, which I think would be cool. But maybe there'll be more Rami Malek analogs by the time this thing is shot and made. And there could be somebody who's quite handsome and distinct in his own way, but it's got to be not, enough said. Next question. Anything from you?
Well, you mentioned something about a nice person writing awful things.
I did.
I mean, and then you mentioned misery. You can't help but question the mind of someone who writes these terrible things. So
Yeah.
speak to that a little bit more.
Yeah, that's a funny thing, and I'm never completely sure how to answer that. I know that I will say this.
Resist the urge to do terrible things, writing about it instead.
It's funny because I've always lived by the philosophy that what you expect is what you get, and that you tend to, you tend to sort of surround yourself in your life with the things that you see in your head. That if you expect terrible things, they're more likely to step into them. And so I actually, I spend most of my adult life writing nonfiction about lovely people doing lovely things and leadership and self-development and all kinds of admirable and aspirant qualities. And the idea, I'm new to this crime fiction thing. This is my third crime novel. I just started. And I spent a couple of years thinking, do I really want to spend a year of my life delving in the mind of a homicidal psychopath? And so, yeah, and it's a great question. I think that it's funny, people always told me that crime writers are the nicest people in the world. And I've discovered that's just exactly true. I mean, I've been with, in the company of all, excuse me, I've been in the company of, a lot of the great crime writers of our day, and they're just such phenomenally splendid, lovely people. I mean, all writers are okay, but they're, in the personal development and self-development world, there's some people that aren't as nice as crime writers. I think that when you write crime, you write mysteries and thrillers and whodunits and all these different genres of crime novel, it's a real, you really delve into human nature. And it's the mind of the hero, the mind of the villain, the mind of all of the victims, the mind of all these people. I see tremendous empathy in all these crime writers. I mean, and everybody's got empathy, but these guys really kind of develop it as a vocational skill. And to me, the whole thing with crime writing is, hi, baby. We all face horrific, terrible, frustrating things in our lives. We don't all face homicidal sociopaths, but we all face bosses we don't like, landlords we don't like, people in customer service we don't like, difficult situations. We're betrayed by friends, we lose sweethearts, people die around us. We have experienced tough things in our lives. And for me, reading someone like Reacher or Finn or whoever, Philip Marlowe or whoever, face really ugly adversity and find their way through it, to overcome it, to deal with it, to at least understand it. It makes us feel somehow empowered to deal with our own lives better. And yeah, I don't know where all the violent and terrible things, the murders and stuff, I don't know where that comes from. It's just, I think it's just there in the human experience. I've never experienced these things, but we're all human beings, so we kind of all know, we sort of all know everything about what it's like to be a human being. How's that for a pretty esoteric answer? Very simple question.
Reassuring to know that you're not suppressing the
You know, there are, I know crime writers who actually experience terrifying crime, trauma, you know, violent crime themselves, and as a result of that turn. But that's not the majority. The majority, it's just they're kind of making up a hero. And the hero, because it's in the real world, is in the context of terrible things. But it's, you know, most people are, like everyone says about Stephen King, very nice man. Hey. What else can I tell you? You will be quizzed on this later on.
What is particularly alive for you now, right now, John, in terms of
What?
in your writing and in what has got you lit up right now?
Two things. To be honest, one thing that's got me lit up right now is I have a writing program. I've got for the first time ever in my adult life, I'm teaching writing, and I got this 1 year writing program, writing and teaching and coaching, and it's I'm taking people through a year of a curriculum of how to write a book, how to write, polish, and publish and launch a book. And then we also have weekly coaching calls, live coaching calls, and so it's a whole program with multiple facets. And I'm having a blast, partly because the more I teach, the more I learn. I'm learning a whole lot about the process myself. It was always intuitive, but now it has to be articulated. And it's also just really cool to be able to support other people and helping to take their experience and turn it into a book. Like, for example, Jackie was in the program. So that's got me, frankly, really, really quite lit up right now. The other thing is I'm starting a novel of my own that I'm not writing with anybody else, which is going to be, I've only got one book out there that's actually not a co-authorship, which is a book called How to Write Good, or at least Gooder. And that's just all me. But every other book I've written has been co-authorship, has been a partnership with somebody else. So it's going to be fun to strike out on my own and just make it out of my head. Now, and that's, I don't know what time it is, but, you know, I feel oh, here comes Matthew.
Trouble.
Hey, man, how are you?
How are you?
Good. We were just thinking about wrapping up pretty soon. I did a reading, we're going to do some signing.
But we're taking questions and we know you have one.
But if you have questions, man, this is your chance.
Well, now I feel like we're late to the party.
Think about putting him on the spot right
Now
there.
we've all been waiting to hear what Matthew has to say.
Well, then I'm going to put John on the spot. How did I find out about this only 2 days in advance? I would have canceled the soccer practice I was running.
There's a simple answer. The busy life of a novelist. Yeah, man, I'll tell you. What I'm learning about book conventions, you got to invite people like 2 months ahead of time. So I promise next year. And all of you out there on the live stream right now, you can.
Yay.
Be much more elaborate and conscious about the
Are there any questions coming off the live?
Oh, that's a good point. I had to do.
Don King has one.
Don.
Can you read it?
Yeah, it says, John, what is something you know now as the writer that you didn't know when you first started writing about Finn?
Something you know now about Finn that you didn't know when you first started writing.
I heard.
Oh, sorry.
You know, thank you, Don. That's a great question because there are writers I know who completely sketch out their hero before they. This is taught in writing programs. They completely sketch out, like do a whole profile, a whole history, a whole biography of their character before they begin. I found I can't do that. I can sketch out a little bit for a protagonist like Finn. I'll sketch out more, but not much. And so I honestly kind of learned almost everything I know about Finn. I learned after I started writing him. I knew about that. In fact, here's what I knew. Here's where Finn came from. There is an actual live, real person who suffered a very similar traumatic event when he was 8 as Finn did. And I knew about that guy, and I knew what his life as an adult was like. As an adult, he presented, as psychologists would say, without affect, just kind of like a blank wall, no emotion, almost like an automaton, because he'd been so traumatized that it's like he'd been shut down. And he was in the military, and was very good at what he did. And he was, a good guy. He wasn't a sociopath. He wasn't homicidal. He wasn't a sociological deviant. But he was completely shut down. We wanted to get out of that. As an adult, he wanted to find a way to become more alive, to get color in his affect. And that was, for me, the inspiration for Finn. So I knew that. And when I first started writing Finn, some days I'd write him, and the descriptions he would seem almost like a sociopath, or psychopath. Let's just say, completely devoid of empathy, and unable to comprehend other people. And some days I'd write him, and he seemed like maybe he was autistic. He was in some place in the spectrum, and it took me a lot of writing and rewriting to kind of find who he was, what he really felt like. And then what happens is, in each book, he is waking up a little bit more. He's finding more about himself. In the first book, the idea of having a friend is almost incomprehensible to him. He even says at one point in Steel Fear, Finn didn't have any empathy. It was perhaps it was a muscle that had been severed in his childhood. In the second book, it ends with someone saying to him, "Thank you for being such a good friend," and it's almost inconceivable to him. He's created a friendship. In the third book, he forms an attachment to these 2 young kids who've gone missing, and it's almost like he rediscovers what it feels like to be part of the family. And these are all pieces of Finn that are waking up, bit by bit by bit. He's a very different person by the end of book 3 than he was at the beginning of book 1. And it's only been a year. There's lots happened to him. A year and a half. But to answer your question, for example, I knew that Finn didn't drink alcohol, didn't drink coffee, because I just made those decisions up. I said, whatever is the classic, hard-hitting, military loner hero, I want to go the opposite way. So he doesn't drink. He's not a hard-drinking SEAL. He doesn't touch alcohol. In fact, let's have him not touch coffee. And so I made up a list of things like that, that I knew at the beginning. I knew that he had a brother. I knew that he had burned out memories from his childhood. I knew that water was his superpower. That water, when he has contact with water, it's like it rejuvenates him. He can do anything. And I didn't know much else about it. So everything else is kind of developed in the process of writing the book. And that happens to me a lot. I don't know who somebody is until I write them for a while. It's kind of like getting to know a real person in your life. You meet them, you shake their hand, you know their name, you know what their job is, but you don't really know who they are until you hang out with them for a while, and then you get to know who they are.
That's awesome.
The gentleman in the back.
Now that I've settled in, I think I have a real question. So if you could give one, and I'm trying to think of one I haven't asked you already.
Yes.
If you could give one piece of advice to someone that's just starting out writing fiction, what would it be?
Can I make it 2? So
Sure.
The first, it might be obvious. It should be obvious, but it is.
Nothing's obvious.
Yeah, okay. The first is to read great fiction. Read great fiction. I recently heard a writer say, read everything, read good stuff and bad stuff, because you learn from the bad stuff what you don't want to do. Might work for him, doesn't work for me. If I start to read a book and it's like I am really like not loving the way this author is going, I will put it down, because it's like what you feed your mouth, builds your cells. What you feed your brain, feeds your mental cells. So first, read great fiction. It doesn't necessarily have to be in the genre that you want to write in. In fact, it's often nourishing not to be in that genre. But read great fiction, number one, read a lot. Don't analyze while you're reading, but after you put the book down and say, now, how did they do that? Maybe you go back and poke around and try to understand how they made that character come alive. What did they do to make you empathize with them, to make you love them, to make you care about them? Where are the words that made that happen? It's fun to pick that apart. The second thing I would say is to practice writing short form fiction. And I'm sorry, practice writing and publishing short form fiction. And all I mean by publishing is that somebody other than you reads it. Whether it's literally writing short stories and poems or whatever, and submitting publication to magazines, which is a great thing to do, or putting them on a blog, putting them on a post, putting them in newsletters, finding any form you can. You can do a short piece of writing, 200, 400, 800, 1200, 1500 words, no more than that even, and get it in front of other people to have the experience of taking an idea, putting it on the page, having it be terrible, having it be crap, because of course it will be, it always is. It is when I do, it is when everybody does. It is when my child does, even though he says it's not true, but it is. And then fixing it, revising it, rewriting it, polishing it, and then putting it out in the world and letting go of it, where you have to stop revising, and now other people are reading it and have the experience of others reading it, not just your mom, and not just your spouse, but other people who don't have a dog in that hunt. That is an experience that will make you a writer. And you may be at the very beginning of your curve, and your skills may be really rough, and you may not be polished at all, and you may have a long way to climb, but that'll make you a writer.
Awesome.
The reason Matthew says, trying to give a question I haven't asked you yet, is that I've been on his podcast a bunch of times.
Which is great.
Which is
It's
my favorite.
I might add a third suggestion. They need to take John's class. Writing Mastery Mentorship is incredible.
Commercial. Thanks, Jeff. I'll leave the money in the grocery store.
Tell us what you're reading now.
What did you
What are
say?
you reading?
I'll tell you what I'm just about. Well, what I am reading right now is I'm actually reading the manuscript for Jeff's book. Because I'm critiquing it for him as a friend. What I'm just about to read in terms of published books is Lou Berney's latest book, Dark Ride. I really love Lou Berney. Lou Berney wrote a couple of books that didn't get a ton of notes, but they were well received. And then he wrote a book called Long and Far Away Gone, which was just a beautiful novel, mystery. And then he came out a few years ago with this book called November Road that blew the planet's mind. It was like on everybody's best of the year list. It made him a household name. I particularly love Lou Berney because he offered an endorsement for Cold Fear when Cold Fear came out. And so I'm very grateful for that. But he just came out with a book called Dark Ride, and I haven't read it. It came out this Tuesday, and I'm looking forward to reading that. I'm also very much looking forward to reading the next Adrian McKinty book, which came out a couple months ago, and I'm saving it. I'm actually saving that book, to kind of come back to the question about reading, saving that book until I start actually working on my new novel. Because when I start working on my new novel, I want Adrian McKinty in my book.
And we both just finished The German Girl.
We both just read The German Girl, which is a historical novel, because we met the author of that out of BoucherCon. He's such a sweet man. What a lovely, lovely person. And so we got his book, The German Girl, which we then learned it sold over 1 million copies, so he must have done something right. And that was pretty wild. It was pretty amazing. A great fictionalization of a very real and very shameful chapter in the World War II history.
Do you find it difficult to read while you're writing your own?
That's a funny thing. I read a lot in between. I do the most reading when I'm kind of in between writing. And sometimes, in fact, I get stuck writing, and I try every trick to get unstuck that I have in my quiver, and finally I realize the only trick's going to work is to stop writing and read. It's kind of like refilling the gas tank, so I read a ton. But while I'm writing, I'll just say I'm very careful. I don't have a difficulty reading, but I'm very careful about what I read, because that author is going to be in my head. I've certainly made no conscious effort to imitate or echo, but it happens. I can take pages of books I've written and say, oh yeah, I was reading Jack Reacher right there. Oh yeah, I was reading Tana French right there, because you got to kind of feel it. It rubs off a little bit. So I'm just cautious about, I'm selective about what I read. Like I said, I want Adrian McGinty in my head when I start the 6th novel. Adrian McGinty or Tana French, one or the other, because I want that Dylan Thomas thing going on.
Janelle Bixler has a question. It's, what inspires you to come up with the characters and the storylines when you're writing?
It's funny, the characters, it starts out a pretty mechanical process, to be honest. It's not that inspired. It starts out like, let's say I have Finn, but this could just apply equally as well to a parable or some other kind of book. I got Finn, and he's in Iceland, and so I want to have somebody. Finn is now an outlaw. He's a fugitive from the law. So I want to have somebody who's in the law, and I want to have it. He's a guy. I want it to be a girl. He's a loner. I want her to be part of it. Okay, fine. A woman policeman. So we're going to have a woman policeman, and she's going to be Icelandic. And I just kind of, this is mechanical so far, all of this. And then I start putting her in situations, and from the first page, once she's in a live situation, she starts to take on characteristics and become a real person. And Krista something, who was the lady cop in Call of Fear, became one of my favorite characters ever. But she just started off as, Finn needs a law person to butt up against. So it's not magic, and it's not even sophisticated. It's kind of very simple. It's in the peeling away and discovering that it gets to be exciting. In terms of storyline, storylines usually come from two, you probably heard this before, from two isolated elements butting up against each other. Like aircraft carrier, serial killer. Cool. Puerto Rico. 2 kids kidnapped. Hurricane. They come from story elements that I find interesting, like the idea of writing in a hurricane. And one thing that inspired the events of Blind Fear was, I am not great with water. I am sort of an anti-SEAL. I don't swim that well. I don't love being in the water. I wouldn't drown if you threw me in a pool, but I'm not at home there at all. And so the idea of being out on the ocean in the middle of a hurricane in a boat all by myself is an idea that makes my hair curl. So I thought, cool, I should write that. So that's what really, a lot of it is just like, I'll take column A and column B, 2 really cool, interesting, weird things, either that I'm terrified of, that I have an affinity for, and smush them together and just kind of play with what if.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you all for your lovely questions there from the inside of Lisa's iPhone. Just gonna look at my own iPhone to see where we are in time. Where are we in time?
Yeah, we have, it's 7:54.
Oh my
and
heavens!
we want to leave people enough
I think we need
time
a
to
little
buy a
time
book and have
to
you
time.
autograph it,
Right.
including
So we
me.
should wrap, right?
Yes.
I mean,
Anybody have?
if there are any more questions, I'm not going to force you out.
let's say, is there maybe one more question?
Do you have anything, Jeff? Yes, not.
I'll give you one more. What's next, John? What's next? Well, of course, I just came out with a book this week. It was not intentional, as I was saying to Jessica earlier. I certainly didn't plan to have Blind Fear come out in July and another book come out in September, which is really nuts. I don't recommend it. Never do it. Because it's difficult to give both books the attention they deserve, promotionally speaking and so on. But I just came out with a book called The Vagrant, which is a parable. It's probably the most novelistic parable. It's in some ways different than anything I've ever written before. And I had a blast writing it. It's the first parable I've ever written in the first person. And it's the character, at least at first, is not entirely likable. And I'll leave it up to you as to whether that changes through the course of the book. But that book feels like a novel to me. It was really, really fun to write. The Vagrant. I wrote with a friend named Dan Rockwell, who's a leadership guru. He's a wonderful man. So that's out. I'm spinning ideas for Blind Fear 4. I don't have a deadline for Blind Fear 4. We're busy promoting the first 3, and we're dealing with the TV series. And so 4 is a baby in gestation. But I do know a few things about it. I do know that the island of Malta is involved. And there may or may not be a dungeon that tunnels very, very deep under the earth. But I've already said too much. It may or may not be that the Count of Monte Cristo was inspiration for that. But I can't say anymore.
You will neither confirm nor deny.
Here's a character who was a helicopter pilot in book 1 who's probably going to. Oh, no, that's no more. Anyway, I'm really looking forward to that. People have asked how many Finn books are there in the Finn universe, and I don't know the answer to that, but I do know we're not done yet. We're going to get back to that cabin, that closet, that gun closet in that cabin in the Oregon woods sooner or later, and get to the heart of that. But more immediately, I'm working on another novel that's just mine, and this one takes place in one of the most fascinating environments I've ever encountered, and that's New England. Come home and do something there, and the heroine there is a woman who is a former Boston homicide cop and now FBI profiler, and is on hand to help with some recent murders and maybe dig up some old ones. And that's all I'm going to say about that.
Well, that's wicked cool.
But I'm really looking forward to digging into that, because it's like doing a novel all by myself, and take off the training wheels and put on my big boy pants and write a novel about yourself. Oh, look at the time. Thank you all so much for coming. I will be available to sign books.
I'm going to get back to my car now.
Thank you.
Oh, I'll definitely sign it. That's awesome.
Yay.
I want to thank Jessica and this store. We've never been to this store before.
This is so awesome.
I got to tell you, can I just tell a quick story?
Yep.
It takes about 60 seconds. I told, no, I didn't tell Jessica this. I told Stephanie over dinner. We went on a book tour last summer for Cold Fear, book 2, and went all around the country, and then we did a bunch in New England, and we were at this beautiful store in Rhode Island that, it was Rhode Island, right? I think, yeah. And it had an upstairs and a downstairs, and had this amazing kids section. It had one of the nicest coffee bars I've ever seen in a bookstore.
Cherry cabinets for the books.
Cherry cabinets. And when you walk in to this bookstore, there's the cash register is right here, a wooden shelf. And if you happen to look down at floor level, there's a little door this big. And if you get down on your hands and knees and open the door and look inside, there's 3 doors like that placed throughout the bookstore. This is for kids. It's like, this place is magical. We loved it. So this summer, when I was getting ready for Blind Fear, I wrote him an email and said, hey, I would love to come back and do an event this summer, book 3, if you're interested. And didn't hear. And then they wrote back and said, we're so sorry. We're changing staff, it's turnover, and we're not really doing any events in July and August. Maybe in the fall? I thought, yeah, okay, in the fall. So in August, I was scrolling through Instagram one day, and I saw the announcement from them. We have
so enjoyed serving this community, but we've had to close.
Oh.
We couldn't make it financially. And this is a really wealthy community. And we were heartbroken, but I tell that just to say that independent bookstores are like the lifeblood of novelists' careers and lives. And for every store that is open today, you're looking at a minor miracle. It's amazing. And so anything, I always recommend people say, where can I find your books? I always say bookshop.org or your local indie bookstore. You have to go to Amazon, Barnes & Noble, go ahead. But yeah, we're so grateful to independent bookstores because you guys don't just stock books, you actually interact with readers and make it a mission, a calling, and that's just fantastic. Librarians are, cut from the same cloth. So independent booksellers and librarians are my heroes. And, thank you.
Thank you.
In addition to the bookmarks, there are these lovely lens cloths,
Oops.
Blind Fair lens cloths, which are free up on the register as well.
So I will get going because
Bye, everybody.
I didn't buy my book yet and have them sign it, so I want to go do that.
Bye, everybody. We'll see you all next week.
Thank
guys.
you. Love you guys. I gotta figure Wicked. I gotta figure out how to stop. Oh, move from stage.
I know we're going to set in New Jersey.
Oh.
I'll forget.